Hi friends, it's Angie. It's May Day, the 1st of May, 2022, and it's 7 years to the day from when I believed my Irish twin, this beautiful painting donated by Colleen Black, Soul Sisters, which reminds me of myself and my sister. She was 11 months older than me to the day, and the date and the time, and the location, the cot, the ward, everything. 3:30 in the morning, RAF Vegberg Military Hospital in Germany. I believe my sister died in suspicious circumstances on May Day 7 years ago. So I want to mark it. My face looks very big, but my microphone, I paid €60 for what turned out to be a karaoke microphone, and actually my camera microphone is better, so I really need to get this microphone malarkey sorted out. So yes, I'm going to recount the anomalies around my sister's death, aged 58, in suspicious circumstances, and try and locate some evidence for you, including emails from the coroner, inquest, death certificates, and various bits and pieces. It's very hard, but I'm blessed to have a survivor that I message with. We both have DID, so we don't even do video calls, but we do voice clips and messages, and her wisdom and her ability to listen as well as share is profound and is helping me a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do, we've got a little pact going on whereby if I die first, she will publish all our private messages, because I find it very easy to disclose to her, with somebody that listens without judgment or trolling or whatever, and with understanding, really. So the arrangement is, if I die first, she will publish our messages, and if she dies first, I will publish her poetry. So today and tomorrow, for some, is a bank holiday weekend, Labour Day, Yeehaw, Maypole, Morris dancers, and so on and so forth, oblivious to the fact that in the satanic world, it's also Beltaine, and a very heavy ritual date, which is why I believe the authorities tried to cover up that it was this day 7 years ago that my sister died. And anyway, so I'm going to start with this poem by my friend, and I'm not going to at this stage reveal her name, although she posts publicly her poetry and has trusted me to publish it. We'll just get rid of that. So yeah, I'll share it anonymously at this stage, and if she gives me permission, I'll credit her in the description box. So I'll start with this trigger warning. And I do often try and put my best foot forward and do lives only when I feel positive, but that's not completely honest, is it? I know pretty much everybody experiences down days, and I'm not maudlin. It's 7 years, but I am very aware that I never got justice for my sister thus far. So this is called a ritual abuse survivor's poetry. So it's May Day for many, but for us it was Beltaine, where the fires were burning and people danced like they were insane. Candles would surround you while you were inside, so the heat was always present, burning away at your pride. We learned to be scared of fire just before the age of 10, because we were heading to double figures so that Beltaine meant things were not the same again. We saw another child get burned, and we just knew by the look in their eyes that they were warning us we could be next. And so we just sat still, petrified, watching the fires burning, mesmerized by the flames, dizzy with the chanting, not wanting to take part in the games. We didn't want to be raped around the fire. And watching others suffer was worse. We wanted to run away, but we grew up with a family that was cursed. We know the bonfires represented death, and we knew again rabbits would die. It seemed to be their favourite animal to kill. And children also wouldn't survive. Girls would be threatened to lose their hair, held over a smaller fire's flame. If they didn't do as they were told, their hair would be burned and their head maimed, another date distorted, and used as an excuse to abuse. Everything twisted for their perverse fun, and it seemed they had nothing to lose. Today also marks 26 weeks until Halloween, so it's kind of halfway through their year. And 6 is always a significant number, and to this day it can fill us with fear. We only have to look at a 6 and it's enough to cause dissociation. And a 9 does just the same. There's so many associations. And many just don't get it, but this is our norm. We were stuck in the group for 29 years. And so on days like today, we're stuck in the storm. A storm most don't understand and probably think we're mad. That perception leaves survivors isolated, feeling alone and so sad. That's what the leaders want. As if you are alone, you may not leave. You feel like you belong to them, and a normal life you cannot lead. Sometimes it's better the devil you know. And when you don't fit in outside the cult, you remain controlled and under their clutches, and that really isn't your fault. We as a society need to realize the damage caused by SRA and do what we can to support the survivors, because many are suffering to this very day. You may think what they say isn't believable, but why would we lie and deceive? We have nothing to gain when we try and open up and hope we'll be believed. If we're told we are a liar, then we may well just go home, where that is easier than constantly looking over your shoulder, feeling scared and totally alone. So enjoy your bank holiday. We remember Beltaine with fear. It's another day we dread, another scary day of the year. The memories plague us even though we are free, but many suffer to this very day, and sadly some are too ignorant to see. Ignorance may well be bliss, but today's children are the next generation. Will they be told it's historical now and be diagnosed as mentally ill, living on medication? Ritual abuse didn't just stop because we are now adult. Silence and ignorance is the abuser's best friend, and it's their go-to default. They rely on people not believing in what survivors have to say. And whilst we don't believe them, then children will continue to be abused every day. Okay, I've just got a message saying I can give credit for that. The author of that poem and many others about satanic ritual abuse is my dear friend Michaela Robinson. Thanks, Michaela. contact me if you want to, if you want to at least find her groups. Now, so beautiful. I'm going to read as I shared with her and add a couple of details about my sister's death 7 years ago, because I'm still somewhat dissociated from it, because I tried to get justice for her. And the cover-up, in my opinion, was spectacular. I'd like to give a shout-out to my local TD. I won't say his name at the moment because of trolls, but his sister attended my sister's wake, and she observed me wrestling with the details of the death scene. And one of the details was the hot water bottle which my son had secured, and my son is strong, athletic type, had secured the night before on Fiona's lower back, was mysteriously found open with most of the contents missing, and a dribble spilled on the floor beside her bed. And my father, having been based in RAF Hereford, and had all sorts of mystery assignments in his 25 years in the Royal Air Force, used to regularly share with us SAS-type assassination techniques, which would leave no trace of assassination. And one of them he shared with us as children was that you could force liquid into somebody's lungs and then kneel on their chest and cause them to drown in the fluid, and it would not appear as a murder. And mysteriously, I dissociated on. My sister called me when she found Fiona dead. She'd run out of the house. She couldn't cope with it. I went in and I dissociated and started trying to tidy up and make it pretty. And but I noticed an odd thing, which was Fiona's pillowcase was wet in two patches, as if she'd had liquid poured into it and dribbled out of both sides of her mouth. Like the whole pillow wasn't wet, just a patch here and a patch there. And the TD's sister could verify this, I think, from attending the wake. I was leaning over my sister's body in the coffin, which is an Irish tradition, open casket. And I was just speaking out loud, saying, I don't understand the water bottle. I don't understand the water bottle. You know, my son had proffered a theory that maybe if she was having a heart attack, she knew she needed fluid and she could drink it out of the water bottle. I don't believe that at all. I'm more inclined toward the SAS secret assassination technique myself. But the one question I forgot to ask at the inquest was if there was excess fluid on her lungs. Sorry, guys. Right, let's just see where I recount what I've shared with this new friend. Okay. No, it goes back further than. Sorry, guys. Again, I'm always telling people if you go to YouTube and watch the video on YouTube, on the top right-hand corner, there's a symbol for settings. If you press that, it says speed to be viewed at. And you can, when I'm in this sort of dissociated state, you can put it on view at 1.5 times speed. Okay. Right, we communicate quite a lot. Right, well, I'm just going to pick it up where I can. I don't have to be perfect. Thank you for listening. Yeah, so I said this is my best way to communicate because the trauma runs deep. Yeah, I make videos because sometimes it's hard to write or even speak the trauma. Right. So I just remark. I often stop. I won't share this person's side of the conversation because I don't have permission to at this stage. But I do say I often stopped myself pursuing justice by condemning myself for something completely unrelated. And then, right, yeah, so I remarked to her, your input helps me a lot. It's like, yes, I contacted safeguarding and they allocated a social worker to, well, I won't go into detail there. I've offered to self-censor on visiting my father. I'm just trying to find where I start sharing with her about my sister. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, people, but look. So my friend says, so your sister was killed on MayDay. So I must have told her that before, but I can't find it in the message. And I say, yes, my sister was killed on MayDay according to the research I did on rigor mortis. And the fact that my son found her unconscious on the floor the night before and put her to bed and went over to the farm to my sister and asked her to check on Fiona that evening because she was unconscious, semi-conscious, and he put her in the recovery position with the water bottle secured on her back. And my father sitting in the living room oblivious, watching television, or allegedly oblivious. My sister, sadly, didn't bother to go check on Fiona that evening until 8 the next morning, coinciding with her daily check of a mare that was in foal in the paddock. And Fiona was dead in the bed with rigor mortis. This was about 8 a.m. According to my research, the level of rigor mortis indicated that she had indeed died on MayDay, which is my belief. The coroner went out of his way to record the death as the second. Then I say, the original coroner assigned to my sister, I knew because I'd sat at the same table as her at a wedding a few weeks previous, and she lives round the corner from me. I told her I suspected my sister had been drugged and sexually abused, but because my sister allegedly left no will, my parents would have had to give permission for Fiona's body to be exhumed, be examined for sexual abuse, and they weren't going to do that. The coroner also believed me that my mum and sister had been about to take a DNA test to verify the swapped at birth baby suspicions, and she put aside some of my sister's DNA from the autopsy for that purpose. All of a sudden, she was taken off the job, and her boss took over for no given reason. Yes, the coroner was dodgy. It was as if the whole cult in the town and surrounding area came together to cover up the death of my sister, even registering her death at a Masonic number 1330 on the 2nd of May. Born at 3:30 as myself, Freemasonic designed military hospital RAF Vegberg in Germany near Mönchengladbach, registered dead at 13:30, etc. Zero alcohol in her toxicology, but written up as an alcohol-related death. Sadly, my father used to gloat to Fiona and Mum, doesn't matter what you say, nobody will believe you, you're an alcoholic. You know, it's such an easy thing to write off survivors' testimonies if they've fallen into addiction. It's criminal. I think addiction was programmed. I really do. If you look at the experiment with introducing cigarettes to women and trying to get women back into the workplace to double tax income. If you do your research, I do believe that addiction was very much part of MK Ultra. It's not an excuse, but even the 12-step programs, I've ruffled feathers by saying they were downloaded during seances and with very, very high-level connections to Freemasons. And to me, it's another secret society. What you hear here, what you see here, what is it? What you see here, what you hear here. When you leave here, let it stay here. Ba 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 ba. It's a form of mind control, in my opinion. It helps some people. Good for you. But to me, it's a cult. It's a secret society, and it's based on staying quiet and not disclosing outside of the secret group. Okay. So, zero alcohol in a toxicology be written up as an alcohol-related death. And when I contacted the coroner, the one that had taken over, the boss, and I said, I really strongly demand that you remove alcohol-related death from my sister's death certificate, because there was no alcohol in her system. And he said, oh, once it's done, you can't change a death certificate. But lo and behold, he sent me out the death certificate, and it said, this is hilarious, except for it's not, the body was discovered by Garda Anne-Marie Galligan. That's my young sister. She's never been a Garda cop ever, although her daughter now is, much to the horror of many that know her. And so then he had to change the death certificate, but all he did was remove Garda from Anne-Marie Galligan's name and not remove alcohol-related death. Nothing to see here, move along. There was a mystery toxin in my sister's blood toxicology, at a level of over 500. And at the inquest, they tried to write it off saying, oh, well, you know, we didn't manage to do the autopsy till 5 days after she died, so, you know, perhaps the alcohol mutated into this mystery toxin. And sadly, I didn't connect the dots until months later that when I got my mother away from my father, because she was in fear of her life daily, she was also under St James's Hospital in Dublin for leukemia, and they reported a mystery toxin in her liver at a level of 350, which should, in normal circumstances, be between 40 and 70. It was blamed on alcohol. But when I got my mum away from my dad's, and a couple of months later took her for her regular 3-monthly visit to St James's, including bloods, they said, oh, wow, Angie, what have you done? Whatever you've done, keep doing it. Her bloods are down to 70. They're like fantastic. Has she stopped drinking? And I said, no. She has a couple of glasses. You know, she still has a little tipple. Well, they said, well, whatever you've done, she's gone from 350 to 70 with this toxin in her liver. And it was only months after the inquest that I realised it was probably the same poison used on my mother as on my sister. Fortunately, I got my mum away in time to save her, but sadly my sister walked into the lion's den, in my opinion, and suffered a more severe poisoning. usually hidden in alcohol, in my opinion. Right, okay. So I said mystery toxin over 500 dismissed, and I didn't connect it with the same issue my mother had had before I moved her out until months later. It stunk from beginning to end. I'm gagged from speaking about my visits to my father, but they can't gag me from telling the truth about the past. And if they do, so be it if I lose access due to still whistleblowing. My sister that has the farm administered my dead sister Fiona's estate worth about $1 million, 2 properties, 2 life insurance policies, stocks and shares, bank accounts. Yeah, very wealthy woman. Despite Fiona telling me that she knew Anne-Marie, Kathy and Dad were being controlling, financially abusive, etc., but she said she didn't have the strength to walk away and abandon Dad. Do you see how strong the trauma bonding was and is? You know, like I had to question myself after 7 years of no contact since what I believe was murder of my sister. I went no contact with my father. And there was a recent deathbed appeal to visit him. The hospital said he was dying. And according to the information relayed to me, he had asked for me and my sister Sharon by name. And because I felt I heard the word of the Lord several years ago in a different deathbed scenario, that he would repent on his deathbed, I didn't answer my dad's call. I answered God's call. And I went. And what I observed, and what I'd heard also recently, was that no, he's going to live till he's 97. I might be wrong. You can call me a false prophet if I turn out to be wrong. But I felt the Lord say a few months ago, he's going to live till he's 97. I don't know why God would tell me that. You know. So I went up fully expecting him to recover, and recover he did, rally he did. You know. But I do have survivor friends saying to me, why are you visiting one of your primary abusers? And half of me says, I don't know. And the other half says, you know, I'm not going to extract a confession from him or manipulate a confession from him. But if I heard the word of the Lord rightly that he will repent on his deathbed, then that's a good thing. Yeah. I've given up trying to be believed, especially by family members. They have to live with their own conscience. So I'll carry on with this. So despite being a beneficiary, which we all were of my sister's will, Anne-Marie has thus far, even 7 years later, refused to provide accounts for what she did with either my sister's estate or my mum's. And yes, I knew the significance of a MayDay killing. And I say, my sister Anne-Marie, and this is the truth, I'm not apologetic for saying this, I'm sorry if she hates me. It's time she stepped up and stopped covering up. Disgusting. So I say, my sister Anne-Marie came to my house a few days after Fiona's death with my older sister Kathy to include me in the funeral stuff. Funnily enough, they offered me the project of completing the whistleblowing Fiona was doing against a consultant psychiatrist, children's psychiatrist in Greater Manchester Health Service, under whom she worked. And she had evidence and support and corroboration for her whistleblowing on that consultant children's psychiatrist, but she died before she could get it public, sadly. So my sisters Kathy and Anne-Marie were offering me as a journalist, investigative journalist, you know, wolfhound, whatever, to take all the evidence Fiona had gathered and bring that charge against the consultant psychiatrist to a successful conclusion. But it went Pete Tong, and I'll tell you why. Anne-Marie let slip that she'd found my father in Fiona's single bed, cuddling her when she called over, she used to call over at 8 each morning because she had a pregnant mare in the paddock. She takes better care of her horses than she does of our parents. And Anne-Marie was saying it in a nice way. I wish I'd known about recording back then. She was saying, oh yes, when I went over the other morning, you know, Dad was cuddling Fiona in bed and telling her how proud he was that she was going to go to rehab. And I just stopped in utter horror and said, can you say that again, please? And almost instantly, she started to retract. Kathy started to accuse me of seeing things that weren't there. I ran around to see if the coroner that I had originally worked with was in. And when she wasn't, I drove straight to the police to report suspected sexual abuse and suspected murder. To which a, you know, cursory investigation was pretended to be carried out. Anyway, so I said I went right round to the coroner and straight to the police and reported it. My sisters later retracted what had been said. Then Anne-Marie believed that my father was cuddling Fiona innocently and saying how proud he was she was going to go to rehab, which would make it all look like her fault. I have to point the finger as well at Paula McKevitt, the GP that took over from William Hanley, the previous GP, great friends with my parents, who suddenly took early retirement and went and worked north of the border, and on whom many mothers had given evidence to me, but wouldn't back me up in an official complaint to Tusla. So that quietly got swept under the rug. Paula McKevitt took over and was a contributory factor to my sister's torture in the final weeks of her life. She only came home to mind my father on sick leave when she was on sick leave due to work-related stress, due to being hugely persecuted for trying to whistleblow on the consultant psychiatrist in the Greater Manchester Health Service for children. So she came home in the November. By May 1st, she was dead at 58. Anyway, so Anne-Marie had innocently let slip that she found Dad in Fiona's single bed, apparently encouraging her and congratulating her. Oh, I was saying about the doctor. The doctor attended the wake. Fiona would run away and get to visit me about once a week, but literally like somebody on the run, she might not almost have shoes on. She would tell me, Dad is hiding my credit cards, he's stealing my money, he's hiding the charger for my phone, the charger for my laptop. He's absolutely sabotaging me. She needed to go back to Manchester. It was once a month to get signed off for work-related stress. And my father would hide all her documents, all her money, and sabotage every attempt she made to do that. I think he was in communication with the Satanists surrounding, covering up that disclosure that Fiona was trying to make in Manchester. Because 2 days before Fiona died, a letter came from them saying she'd been relieved of her duties for not having submitted her medical note. And that was later corrected. But Paula McKevitt, local GP, had a lot to do with that, because when Fiona would say to her, Dad's making it very difficult for me to get back to the UK, can you sign my sick note for work? And she would say no. Fiona was dying in front of her face. My father was starving her. He was depriving her of heat. He was torturing her. And possibly worse, I believe drugging her, and I suspect sexually abusing her. And Paula McKevitt, in my opinion, was complicit. In my opinion, allegedly. And she turned up at Fiona's wake, or funeral, or both, I can't remember, but correct me if I'm wrong. If a GP serves a town of 24,000 people, I would suspect it's protocol that you don't attend funerals and wakes, because if you did, you would cause offence by not attending them all. My sister was certainly not your friend, Paula. You contributed to her death, in my opinion. If Fiona had even managed to get home for a few days once a month, she could have given her head a wobble and realised she was being re-traumatised and imprisoned, really. And in my opinion, Paula McKevitt, you should have been prosecuted, along with my father, for being complicit in her torture. By your refusal to call it anything other than alcoholism. You repeatedly said to her, "Oh no, I'll just sign you off to go to rehab. No, I'm not signing any work-related stress forms. You just go to rehab, off you go." You know, that's the way we get discredited. Anyway, I'll have to put this somewhere safe because, you know, they can come after me when I make these accusations. So yeah, I flew out the house to go to the coroner and the cops. My sisters went mad and said I was making stuff up. And I'll be honest, I said I've often suspected my sister and her husband to be in the local cult. And is there anything else I say about it? I think that's there was stuff earlier, but look, Anne-Marie used Fiona's wealth to pay. Fiona was worth about $1 million when she died. You know, you can argue with me and say 700 grand. Sorry, it was quite a lot, and Anne-Marie's kept the accounts secret. She just gets Kathy to rubber stamp them. Kathy is so compliant and dissociative. She's my eldest sister, 2 years older than me. She denies, you know, my father fractured her skull when she was 8. She denies everything. Oh God, can't even keep, this is why it's good to read this. So I said, weird about dates as well. Anne-Marie used Fiona's wealth to pay for a really expensive double gravestone, which would of course house our parents, and space for one more, which apparently she's allocated the last space to Kathy, my older sister, despite her living in Brixton and me living down the road. But not only did she get written the fake date of death on it, as in the 2nd of May, she also got engraved the wrong date of birth for Fiona. Fiona was born, and if any of you are into numbers, the 16th of July, 1956, at 3:30 in the morning. I was born the 16th of June in the exact same ward, in the exact same military hospital, at 3:30 in the morning. But Anne-Marie had the vastly expensive engraving on the vastly expensive stone, Celtic cross and all the rest of the paraphernalia on Fiona's expense, had it engraved that Fiona was born on the 14th, and said when asked, why have you put the wrong birth date, you know, and I didn't even bother saying the wrong death date. I tried at the inquest to challenge that, and they wouldn't. They were determined not to record that it was a MayDay sacrifice. Anne-Marie replied she'd put the 14th because she got mixed up with a niece's birthday. She corrected it 5 years later at my insistence, because I made graveside recordings of the inaccurate birth and death dates. So yeah, she only corrected it when Mum died 5 years later, because I'd made videos of the grave pointing it out. And then my friend says a dad doesn't cuddle his adult daughter like that. A normal dad wouldn't dream of getting into a single bed with his adult daughter, and most daughters would run for the hills if that happened. Sadly, Fiona may have seen that as her normal, and like you say, trauma bonding as well. Anne-Marie may well be in a cult. It would make sense. She was raised in one, maybe her husband was, and then they end up in one, ? Right, okay. So that's as far as it goes. Let's see, I don't need to please the evidence lunatics, but let's cannot minimize. Okay, if there is a way I can go in, and I'll just try and find you a couple of samples of evidence, like the coroner saying a death certificate once written cannot be changed, and then writing that the body was found by Garda Amory Galligan. And he says, oh, that's a mistake. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you can change that, can you? Right, I haven't opened Chrome before. Here's the thing for me to learn, that if I want to share, I need to do it before I start a Zoom. So yeah, I've shared them before. I've had my main YouTube channel taken down, but most of the videos getting backed up on Archives of Truth. Only the private ones weren't, sadly, backed up, and they would be the most delicate ones regarding skullduggery in my family. So yeah, I will. I can't accept. I could maybe. You can't minimize. But if I'd opened the tabs before making this, I would be able to access them. Sadly, I can't now. Except for Microsoft Edge, which I don't. Anyway, that's enough. Just thinking of my sister. That reminds me, we were 11 months apart, and in many very life-threatening situations, mysterious trafficking situations, crazy high-risk situations, my sister Fiona, 11 months older, protected me. She also did some very wicked things in her time, but I'm just, I think the danger was that she and I were both joining dots and recalling things together and filling in the missing pieces, and she'd been due to do a DNA test with my mum to verify or otherwise the swapped at birth baby situation, which my mother had alleged within half an hour of Fiona's birth, when a different baby was returned to her in the hospital. And they were going to take DNA tests to prove that. And I believe Fiona let that slip to my dad, and that was one of the contributing factors to why she suddenly died. Rest in peace. I made a beautiful, well, I thought it was beautiful, item of pottery to put on Fiona's grave, because I was so aggrieved at the dates being wrong of her birth and death. So I put the correct dates and said the truth will set us free, which, you know. But somehow it got left behind, and then the COVID came and I never accessed it again. And when my mum died, and still retained about 100 grand of Fiona's fortune, which I presume my father has also retained about 100 grand of Fiona's fortune, I managed to say to Emery, you know, correct the date. I didn't get the death date corrected, but I know the truth. But certainly her birth date was corrected. Anyway, just a rambling one. Check the links, and I'll put it on my to-do list to access the coroner's emails and toxicology report and horrible cover-up that ensued after my sister's anomalous death. And I pray, for whatever reason, I just give it to God that I have chosen after 7 years to visit my father weekly. I have offered not to make videos about that, which I'm not. But if by telling the truth of the past, you know, I'm supposed to be writing a book, and the main thrust of my work that brought me online in the first place was to tell my story, to reach out to other survivors and researchers, and make sense of a nonsensical past, MK Ultra, trauma-based mind control, military paedophile rings, familial generational abuse, lost bloodlines and all that. So, you know, if I lose access to my father, I've given it to God. You know, when I felt the Holy Spirit say your dad will repent on his deathbed, I wrestled with God about that for years, and I don't have to be there, you know. I don't know. No happy endings. God bless. Look, not too shabby. Got this little. But anyway, not too shabby. 65 next month. God bless people. Love you all. And appreciate your prayers and your support. Thank you. Check the links in the description. And check Archives of Truth, because there's still probably another 200 videos to upload on there. God bless.